Hello, everybody, and welcome to the CDL Major I episode of the LeanTossup Sports CDL betting podcast. I am joined by my co-host, as always, Ryan of CDLMetrics at CDLMetrics on Twitter. How are you doing today, Ryan?
I am doing well. I am getting very excited for the first major. We're just a couple days away from it. It's going to be a lot of games in 4 days. So every day is going to be loaded with matches. Hopefully, they're all bangers. They probably won't all be, but I think we're going to get a really, really good major. Like in my head, I'm expecting what the kickoff classic was, but on steroids a little bit. So, yeah, I'm as excited as I could be.
I think what you're trying to say is this is what the Kickoff Classic should have been. uh,
Yes.
I mean, yeah,
Yes.
it's minimum four games of Call of Duty a day, which is as God intended. It was right there in the Bible. Look it up. You got 4 games on Thursday. You got all of winners bracket round one. You have all of losers bracket round one on Friday, which is again the teams that lose on day one. They go down to play the loser bracket teams. Then you also randomly play one of the like losers round two bracket. I believe it's I'll have to look that up, but we'll get to it when I get to it. But the one is played on Friday, and then you play. Um, I think you play more games on Saturday, and then you play four more on Saturday, and then you play four more on Sunday. Sunday, of course, being kind of interesting for the simple reason that we're gonna have the best of nine finale. Again, you can find this information out by going on to the Pick'ems website because they have to give you the format of the tournament. So um, so we know that it's a best of nine, and there is no advantage to the winner, which is dumb, but whatever. I guess we're gonna go with that anyway. Again, it's gonna be weird to have a best of nine when both control maps are played by default, but also you're gonna be cramming in 3 matches and a best of nine on a Sunday. We have COD till like 1 a.m. on the East Coast, so yeah, gonna be fun. So no, so getting into this major, and I'm really excited for this as well. Um, Obviously we've one of the bigger obviously the one question everyone wants to ask themselves is who's going to win this major. I know, Ryan, you put out something on Twitter today about who you think. Again, we're recording this on Tuesday because we want to get out right before the major. What does your model say for who's going to win the major?
Yeah. Yeah, we can get into futures right off the bat if you want. Yeah, to no surprise, Atlanta FaZe, the number one seed, are the favorites. Now they are not the odds-on favorite, like greater than 50% favorite. I have them winning the whole thing about 40% of the time. Which, if you compare that to the numbers I ran for last year's tournaments, it's a little below um, what they were last year. Last year in Cold War, you would see them at about 50%, if not higher, when I ran my models for Major 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and Champs even. They were hovering at that coin flip probability. Now they're 40%, which is still very high, don't get me wrong, but maybe as a testament to how many, contending teams we have, and also just like the map to map volatility with Vanguard. So yeah, Atlanta FaZe 40%. Then in second place, and this might surprise some, and honestly, the number is a little high. I have the London Royal Ravens. They are the number two overall seed, and seeding matters as well. We can break that down a little bit later on. But yeah, London are the number two in my model, winning the tournament about 29% of the time. Uh, then there's another big gap. We have two teams that play each other in winners round one. Seattle Surge and Optic Texas, both hovering between 10 and 11%. And that leaves about 10% for everybody else. So in fifth, I have Toronto Ultra getting 7% of that. LA Thieves, pretty low, honestly. I know a lot of people really, really like them. My model has them sixth best odds at just 3%. And then it kind of cascades down with LAG, Boston, Minnesota, Florida, New York, and Paris, all garnering about a 0.5% worth of total win equity. Now, I will say my model tournament simulation thing is not perfect. It does run numbers statically, so it doesn't account for like if a team from losers gets like red hot. It kind of keeps their level where they are. And for the most part, I think teams should stay where they are. So that's not a huge hindrance, but it is just something to note. One other thing I want to mention, and then maybe you can talk about the futures market a little bit. Um, Seeding really does matter in this tournament a lot, or at least a lot more than the qualifying matches that we saw online. So, for those who don't know, um, map vetoes in the qualifiers were decided by a coin flip. So, if you were the team that won the coin flip, you got to choose between being Team A and Team B, of which everyone would always pick Team A because Team A gets first map veto in hardpoint, and they get the one veto in control. So you get to pick which control map you get to play. So the coin flip had like an enormous impact on the actual maps that were played in every match. And I know Dr. Doug from the LAG Analytics camp, he did a great article on this just like this past week, talking about why we see Bocage as hardpoint number one so often. And it's because those teams that win the coin flip uh, to guarantee that they're playing on a good side, quote unquote good side in hardpoint game 4, they'll pick Bocage game 1 because there's not really a bad side to that map, and then they'll pick their preferred control map, and honestly the ball's in their court. For this tournament, now I don't know if this is for sure. I fully expect that the higher seeded team, meaning the team, you know, at 1 or 2 or 3, will be like the coin flip winner, essentially. Like they will always get to pick to be team A. So I do think that is a slight advantage. It's not baked into my model, but it is something to consider. So I think overall this tournament may be less underdog heavy as what we saw in the qualifiers. Not that underdogs killed it in the qualifying matches; they definitely had their days. But I think this could be a little chalky, all things considered.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and that is, I mean, I had actually not heard that specifically about why we had so many boccages. That makes a lot of sense for that. Like we've had days we've had four boccages, or like three out of four bocage, but then we've also had days where there's like no bocage. So it's really interesting and important to understand why that is happening, and I think um I think that's important to note, especially when you're betting on this, right? Because again, one of the softer markets we've been having is game one hard point underdog spread, right? Like you see a team is getting like 40 points on the first hard point map, you bet that it's a bocage, probably winning that bet, right? I mean, not always, but generally. So so no, I'm not like that's a very important thing to note. And so then, all right, before I get to my point, I'll ask you that then. So, do you think we are more likely or less likely to see Game One Bocage now,
I think
like for the major
Oh, I
specifically?
mean, yeah, yeah. I haven't looked into the team by team data specifically on that, but I would say if you are the higher seeded team and you do get map vetoes, if you're even somewhat good at Bocage, you're going to be willing to play it in game 1, so you'll probably veto, right, your worst hardpoint map. Um, Team 2 will then veto their worst. That could be Bocage, but in all likelihood it won't be. Just teams are willing to play on it. If you're a really good team, like Atlanta are by far the best team on Bocage. Um, they're kind of the only team that has been consistently beating teams by like 50 plus on that map. If you're a really good team on Bocage, you're willing to play it game 1 because it means you get the better side spawn in game 4. And I think if you're a bad team, you look at Bocage and you go, okay, listen, this is the map where like KD matters the least. Like Bocage hardpoint is so mixy, and we've had games where like we've had a lot of games where the team that loses the KD battle wins the Bocage, and that's just the nature of it's a small map. If you can just keep one guy alive in Hill, and the rest of your team falls off, like you can get back into Hill pretty easily, even if your one man dies. So I think underdog teams are like, we'll play Bocage, like as long as we're not horrible at it. So I think that's why we see a lot of it. So yeah, I think we'll see more of the same. And honestly, we'll see more of that so long as there's only 4 hardpoint maps to choose. Like just the map pool is so small that like I think we've seen Bocage as like half of the hard points played, or it's something crazy like that. Like it's astronomically high. As a viewer, it's kind of fun to watch just because it's chaos and it gets your heart racing a little bit if it's the end of the game and like you literally have no clue who's going to win. That's exciting. It's not great viewership from a like, okay, what is going on hill to hill? Because it's just chaos all the time. So, long story short, I do think we see more Bocage or about the same amount. And I think that trend continues until we get a wider map pool, at least for hardpoint.
Yeah. Okay. Now, so I'll talk about um my modeling for model a major for the major output. So for the winner. So my modeling for it is a little different. So obviously my model is based off of ELO. So what it does is it forecasts for every game it forecasts a score for that game, and then from there it then um basically it then change with elo. It's an ever evolving model, so it allows you to basically update each team's elo score with the results of that map. So basically the idea is that it'll take into account the fact that some team could go on some crazy run. Like for example, this model is much more fair to Paris. I have them winning 6 times out of the 10,000 times. That is probably the best odds they're ever going to get on, and that might even be better than their sportsbook odds. But again, you're not taking a bite out of that at 500 to 1. It's just insane. Um, so that's that. No, I mean, so basically the model has phase at about a 31% chance, so it's a little lower than yours. But I think once you start getting to that heavier favorite, and again, once FaZe wins a match or two, that goes pretty high. Like I have them at a 50% chance to enter into the finals, right? And at that point, if FaZe is in the finals, I mean, I think it's too late to stop them at that. Well, I mean, maybe not, but FaZe is actually no. FaZe has lost a couple of finals, but not that many of them, right? The only final I think they've lost is one to Toronto, and in last year, basically, they only lost one final. That was to Toronto, and the other ones they either won the final or they weren't in the final and they lost. So again, hard to stop them. I kind of think that they'd be there, but the thing of it is, though, is that if FaZe makes it through the winners bracket and is the final in the winners bracket, then obviously they play less matches, so it gives the other teams a chance to get a higher elo. So maybe that's not the greatest system, but whatever. We'll go with it for now. Um, no. So moving on, I have FaZe about a 31% chance. Then I have a cluster of other teams. So I have Optic at about a 12, London at about 13, Toronto at about a 12, and then Thieves at about 11.3. So all kind of clustered around that. London is interesting that it sticks up above Toronto, but from a value perspective, you can't take a bet at that plus 450. Like you can't like it. The thing is, yeah, like I kind of like London as a sleeper team, but when you're having to like, I mean, again, you're not actually paying anything. You're taking that's like a plus value here. But when you're having to pay that higher price at a plus 450 rather than the plus 700 you're getting at Thieves at Toronto at, I think that's a lot. Like that's a steep price to pay for like you're basically losing an extra $3.50. Well, you $3.50 basically on the line. $350 on $100 bet. You're losing all that just to get like an extra 1% value in the win. I don't think there's value in that. I have opted at about a 12, which is again substantially lower than the plus 350. Um, Let me just find the odds converter here for a second, because if it's optic is 350, which implies a 22% chance. So I have them much lower than that. Um, Phase is a 31% chance. which is a bit lower. But then when you looking at thieves and stuff, they're at 12%. Um, that's about right for the plus 700. So basically, I have Toronto and Thieves priced about right. Again, you'd love to see them at a plus 1,000. But we're just not getting that this major, I don't think. Maybe next major. And again, like if London was at a plus 1,000, I'd 100% take them too. But just I can't take them at plus 450. I just don't think I can. But then again, you also have other sort of things like Boston at like a 5% chance, LEG at a 5% chance, Seattle. But the interesting thing about Boston is because if one of the ways Boston wins the event is if they beat Phase round one. That means they're a lot better than people think, and then that just kind of spins out. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. We'll see how it goes. This is the first time we're doing this for this model. It's not static. There's a strong argument to do static. I think that makes a lot of sense. Your model is probably more closer to what the betting lines actually make, and then you can kind of derive where they're adding or subtracting value from there. But this is kind of more of a like, hey, Paris can go on a run. It's extremely unlikely and laughable if they do, but like there is a non-zero chance, and I think this model gets that better of that non-zero chance. Um,
Definitely. Yeah, you mentioned, sorry to cut you off, but yeah, you
I was
mentioned
I was done. I
Paris.
was done.
Okay. And you said Paris in your model has a 6 out of 10,000 chance of winning the tournament, which, like, yeah, my model's going to say they have a 0% chance. In the 10,000 sims I ran, it's the same Paris team every game, every tournament. Whereas yours, right, if they get that first win, it ups their overall, elo power, whatever you want to call it, into that second game, and maybe they scratch one out in that second game, and it can kind of snowball. So I do really like that. I think your model hits home the value on those long shots a lot better than mine. Because yeah, you get down the board. Two teams I have starting in winners bracket, LAG and Boston, like they're both under 1% chance to win the major. And I think a lot of that comes into like, okay, their first round matchups are very hard. And then their second round matchups aren't going to be much easier, if at all. And then, say they lose initially. Well, now you got to win like 6 or 5 matches in a row. All that, adds up to not a lot of winning in my model. Whereas yours, yeah, if Boston comes out and beats Atlanta, especially convincingly, as unlikely as that is to happen, like my model will say that Boston win, like the Boston team we'll see in the next match after is more like the Boston team we've seen as for the whole year, whereas yours makes that quick adjustment of like, okay, it's the Boston we've seen all year plus this really impressive win against Atlanta. So yeah, I think the numbers fall somewhere in between where we are. And I know, yeah, London for you. Honestly, I kind of like this. We don't disagree that often, but London for you aren't a good value, but for me, they are. So they're one that I've already picked. I know 450 isn't like the sexiest number in the world, but um, again, my numbers could be a little low if map vetoes play out how I think. And honestly, I do think map vetoes matter a lot until you get to the grand finals because it's just going to be laughable. Like we have 4 hard points, 4 search and destroys, and 2 controls. If the match is a best of 9 in the finale, and the game modes are exactly what we had last year, where it's 3 hard points, 4 search and destroys, and 2 controls, that means the only advantage the team from winners bracket gets is they get to veto 1 hard point map. That's it. That's all they get. They don't get a map win for free. At least we don't know that yet. COD League hasn't said anything along the lines of like the team from winners bracket will start up 1-0 or anything like that. It looks like it'll be exactly what it was last year, but map vetoes mean even less in that grand final. So you better be good at both control maps. You better be good at every search and destroy map. And like you better be okay at hardpoint. That's kind of the gist of it. So the grand final veto map, I'm excited to see, like, not excited, but I'm curious to see what the graphic they use to show that will be. Because it's just gonna be like bocage will be the whole screen and it'll say Atlanta. Well, Atlanta wouldn't veto that. Atlanta vetoes Berlin hardpoint, and that's it. And then okay, everyone just play the rest of the map. So that's a little goofy. I really want an expanded map pool. We'll see if we get one. I don't know if we will before stage 2 because there's a really quick turnaround from Major 1 to the stage 2 qualifiers, and I don't know if Sledgehammer's got more maps to shell out in between that time. So I think we're going at least one more stage with a 10 total maps pool, but we'll see. I'm still obviously very excited for the matches.
you're you're somehow underselling the term quick turnaround time. Next week is the beginning of the major two qual.
Yeah.
Like it's like it's you've undersold it. It's literally next week. Now, I will say, little bit of hope, the smallest amount of hope. The Call of Duty League has, and again, we're recording this today because we want to get this out well before the event. But the Call of Duty League tomorrow, they have scheduled a video to come out on their channel, which is the community update with Daniel Say or Sai. I'm not sure exactly how you say his last name, but that's coming out tomorrow at 1 o'clock Eastern time. I'm fairly sure it's 1 o'clock Eastern time. It's YouTube. I don't know, but it that's what it says. So. Basically, it says big news before Optic Major 1, eyeball emoji, and then community update. So, the last time they did this, they told us that they were going to fix control. They kind of did. They said they were going to get rank play. We finally got that like 2 weeks ago. So, I mean, they've mostly made good on their things. It was actually a little wider reaching than I thought it was going to be the last time. They randomly addressed Crim 6 saying that the third mode was going to be Warzone. So, I'm um I'm intrigued to see what they're going to say. Um I hope they're gonna fix control this time. Like actually fix it to make it back to Cold War control. That's one option. I got no idea what there is. I saw someone on Twitter say this Maven and Merc come back. I think that's a little unlikely. It'd be great if that was the thing, but I'm not sure exactly what they mean. Big news. Maybe, maybe this could be like, okay, cool, we have London docks. I doubt it though. But I mean, maybe it could be that. I don't know. Maybe
But
that's
that's the
not.
thing, if you get and I would love that. Well, first off, control fixing the tiebreaker, like not doing kills, doing offensive ticks, that would be like such an improvement. And honestly, I don't feel like it's that hard to implement. Obviously, like coding is very difficult, but for the team, that's working on the game to say, okay, tiebreakers, winner is whoever captured more ticks, and then do kills or whatever after that.
It
That's
is
fine.
really from a coding end,
Like,
it is really not that hard. Like
okay,
like I mean again, I don't know their particular engine, but the difference between kills and ticks, that's literally nothing. That is
right.
easy.
So
And then
that's
adding
job
20
one.
and remember also adding 20 seconds after capturing a tick. That is also pretty easy too. So
Yes. Wait, hold on. So I was thinking about this the other day. Did that happen last year, or was
yeah,
that
how did
rumored?
people
Because
forget I don't how did people forget about this? Like that was
it
the
just like everything about last year has just cleared my mind since we've started this year. And so it was you get a tick, you get 20 seconds. It wasn't you get the zone, you get a minute.
no, it was every
It
tick.
was that initially, right?
Yeah, it was no, it was that initially, and then people said, "Look, mostly because they just pointed at Garrison and Checkmate and said, "This sucks, fix it." And they're like, "Okay, fine, we'll do it by zone to incentivize people to capture the zone, and then also you get 20 seconds per zone." I don't know why people forgot about this because apparently no one remembers this. But no, that was the. I mean, go back and watch Champs last year, and you'll see that that's how it works. But no, that was the thing. There's also a glitch in their clock. I'm not sure if they've noticed it yet. If you watch if you watched last year, what happens is when the and it, I've noticed this. I'm not sure who else has noticed. I've not heard anybody say this, but what happens is when the timer gets close, when there's 30 seconds left in a match or a round or whatever, the timer goes to red. Now when you're now in search and destroy, this is relevant, right? So like when there's less than 20 seconds, when there's less than 30 seconds, I believe, or it's 25, I think, and the clock turns red at the top, and then they plant the bomb. Then there's 40 seconds. It should update that color to make it white again because that's always been the way it is. But for some reason this year, no matter how much time is left on the clock, it still goes red. Same thing happens in control. If they capture a point and the clock is in the red, for some reason when they capture that point, you have like a minute and some odd seconds, and the clock is still red as it should be when it's under like 30 seconds. So again, that's a nitpicky thing for me. That's not particularly relevant. It's fun that that's a bug that they haven't discovered yet, but But yeah, no. So yeah, no, that was the rules for control last year, and I don't understand why we went backwards. I really don't. That makes no sense to
Yeah,
me as to why.
me neither, me neither. But yeah, job 1, do the little things in control to make it better. Because my goodness, Kavudu control is like, yikes. Like, I've logged on to rank play a number of times, gotten Kavudu control, and I'm sure our listeners have too.
Yeah, same
And you're
here.
just like, "Oh, here we go. We're playing TDM for 5 rounds, or 4 rounds, and then good luck offense." So it's yeah, it's a bit of a mess. Job 1, fix control, and yeah, job 2, if we get London Docks or any map, like we only need one really good map that could work for each game mode, and we're good. Like we don't need one for hardpoint and one for search and one for control. Like if we get one that can work for everything, it makes like vetoes that much better. It adds intrigue into the league. Like, oh, who are going to be the good teams on this new map? Like when Apocalypse was added last year or Standoff, like it adds this new kind of meta where teams can play around with like, okay, maybe we're a bad hardpoint team, but maybe we can be the best hardpoint team on London Docks or whatever it might be. So yeah, that's job 2. If we get even just those 2 things, Maven and Merc coming back would be huge, obviously. But I mean, I'm really excited for the announcement. I just saw it, yeah, today, this morning, like the little scheduled YouTube video for it. So I will definitely be tuned in tomorrow. Fingers crossed that it's all stuff that I want to hear, and it's not just like, oh yeah, here there's gonna be more in-game rewards if you link your accounts and blah blah blah. Um, so we'll see, we'll see.
Yeah.
We can maybe analyze it next week.
Yeah, well, we'll be back here next week for the next week, for the next matches. The one thing I will say is that, like, when this game launched, the original report was that it was going to be like, okay, it's going to have London Docks shortly after launch, and to me that made a lot of sense because when when Cold War launched, very quickly Raid was added, which makes sense. It's a classic map. London Docks will be another classic map, and then also I was thinking, oh, okay, well next year what they'll do is they'll release Modern Warfare, and then very soon after they'll release Terminal with it. That makes a lot of sense. But then we never got London Docks, and then they also said, okay, we're going to release two different competitive modes, which I believe to be Control and Capture the Flag. And then they just didn't release Capture the Flag; they just released Control, and then it was broken and it was reverted from where it was working last year. So there's lots of different pieces to this, and I'm not. There's weird things that have happened. I suspect. I mean, I would be very surprised if there isn't a file named londondocs.map sitting in Sledgehammer's server right now. Probably also a couple other ones that they'd be working on too. Saint-Marie Doman. Again, I've watched some of the World War II competitive. So like Saint-Marie Dumont, there was I think one Valkyrie. That one could be kind of cool too. There's a couple of maps they could bring back, and they probably should because apparently the new ones are not good. So they probably need to just update and bring some new maps in. But anyways, again, we can hope for all that. But again, they will not be playing on any of those maps this weekend if they are announced at anyways. So if they are announced at all. So anyways, let's move on to our maps, matches. So again, we talked for a bit about it, and that's actually kind of fine because we technically only have four lines right now. So we'll go through the lines we have now, and then we'll kind of talk about games that we could be talking about in the future. London first match of the day, 3 o'clock on Thursday. London Royal Ravens versus LAG. London Royal Ravens -1.5, -145. LAG +1.5, +110. Ravens -310 on the money line. LAG +230 on the money line. Over 4.5, +165. Under 4.5, -220. I'm actually this is one of the I mean, again, this is the first one we're on, but I'm actually really intrigued to see what you think about this because this is the one I kind of care about. This is like one I'm really having an issue with, struggling with an issue on.
Yeah,
My
this is Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh guys, give me 1 second. No, I mean my heart says LAG. I want to bet on LAG. My heart says that. My mind says LAG. But the model kind of is like, no, London is probably winning this one. Um, what do you think about this, right? I mean, again, London just played like this match just happened. This was like LAG's second last match before the major. They kind of crushed them. London London Royal Ravens have played some teams. They kind of played teams at their worst. They played week one when Optic was bad. They beat Minnesota, not particularly great team. They beat Florida when Florida hadn't 3-0'd Seattle. They beat Seattle when Seattle was kind of down, and then they lost to LAG. Obviously, what do you think here? Do you think that this is like? Am I crazy here to think LAG, or do you think that this is like a no, no, just take the chalk with the Ravens? What do you think?
I don't think you're crazy to have some sort of interest in LAG because you're right. This match did happen in the qualifiers, and LAG did win 3-1. I will say it was not necessarily a blowout, despite a 3-1. LAG won the game one hard point by 8, I want to say. Then they won around 11 in search, so that's pretty narrow. London came out and won the control, and then LAG did win the game for hard point pretty convincingly, but I wouldn't go as far to say it was a blowout. It was one of London's worst matches of the year. Like besides the sweep at the kickoff classic, um, from the hands of Seattle Surge, like, yeah, that was probably London's worst match of the year. That being said, LAG are kind of the same team that they always are, but they're kind of not. And what I mean by that is, right, last year and in Modern Warfare, LAG were a very bad team, like both years, like definitely bottom three team. But they were at least like halfway decent at search and destroy both years. Weirdly enough, they had pretty different rosters both years, but still managed to be scrappy in search and destroy. The hard points and the game threes were not so good. This year, you've kind of got a team that's still, middle of the pack, maybe towards the back from my perspective. But this year, they're actually good at hardpoint or above average at hardpoint. And the other modes, they struggle in mightily. So if LAG is going to win this, I think a 3-1 is somewhat likely. Like if they get those hardpoint wins and can scratch out a search and destroy or show improvement in control, like yeah, like that wouldn't shock me. But I just think London are such a more well-rounded team. And again, I think seeding matters a lot. London should have map vetoes on LAG, so London gets to play whichever control they're better at. Um, they get that preferable side in game 4 if it goes that far. So yeah, I really like London a lot. If you're like me and you believe in them, I wouldn't like don't go money line, don't go minus a map and a half. I would just commit to the sweep. So take the minus 2.5 or to win in exactly 3 maps. It's about 250 if you do that. I think that's the best way to approach it if you're like me and you like London, just full commit to it. Because I think a lot of people, what they're doing with London is like, okay, yes, they've looked good online, for 5 matches, but they're still going, okay, we haven't seen it on LAN. It's still a young team. So they're kind of in this middle ground of like, they're not as good as we think they are, but they're not as bad as what we think they might be as a team full of rookies and one vet and that sort of thing. So I'm of the belief that London are a legitimately top tier team, and because of that, I like the minus 2.5. Um, yeah, they're just well rounded, maybe the most well rounded team in the league. Not the best team, but mode to mode, like they don't have a lot of weaknesses. So give me London. Obviously, I mentioned the futures odds on them. I have them winning this whole thing about 29% of the time. That might be a little high, but again, if map vetoes matter more now, maybe not. So if you're going to go LAG, I don't hate it. Again, we saw them win earlier against London, but it's just, I see a narrow path to victory for LAG unless they've really improved in search or control.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there are probably ways you can bet this game. I would not hate having something on it in terms of like I think you can take the 1.5. Oh, this line has moved now. The plus 1.5 is up to plus 120 now. On or sorry, plus 110 on on Bodog Bovada. It's plus 120 on Bet365. If you're looking at this and you look at map one, on Bovada the spread is on Bodog the spread is plus 24.5. Bet365 it's 27. So 27 and a half. So I don't hate LEG plus 27 and a half, especially if that's a bocage. That seems kind of nice. I mean, there's different pieces to this. LAG has really struggled with control. They could put it together. I wouldn't mind having something on the plus 1.5 and maybe something on the hard point spreads. Because again, like, can LAG keep the hard point close? Yeah, they could probably lose by 15 points. Like again, a 250 to 235, that seems fine, or even a 250 to 220 to be just shy, but you just need a little higher than that. But no, I think there's definitely ways that LAG could cover the spread here. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think it's too crazy to think that they could win, but I don't know. The model disagrees with me. We'll have to see. Next matchup. This is where the model. I do not disagree with the model. We've got Atlanta Phase versus the Boston Breach. This spread on Bodog is already up to it's not a plus 1.5. It's a minus 2.5. For Phase minus 2.5 plus 110. Boston plus 2.5 minus 145. Phase minus 1400 on the money line. Boston plus 675. Over 3.5 minus 150, under 3.5 plus 115. So you're actually getting better. Well, you're somehow getting better odds on under 3.5 than you are on phase minus 2.5. So don't bet phase minus 2.5, bet the under 3.5. um this is pretty well in line with my model gives Boston a little bit better of a chance, but again, it's not a lot better. I've got um, Boston winning. I've got FaZe winning this hard point handily. Again, you got a minus 42.5 spread game one. That's pretty fair. Um, in terms of other games, I think that's more than I think. Uh, the debatable one is map three. I think you can make an argument that um, Boston could maybe take it to around five in control. That's what they did last time, but it was barely though. Atlanta almost had a 3-1 there. But that's probably some value on that. But yeah, I'm liking hard point spreads on this. Don't want to touch the search spreads. I think I'd be a little concerned about the search and destroy spreads. But yeah, what do you think on this? Are we kind of all Atlanta here, or are we gonna do? Do we think that the luck of the Irish here? There's any luck here in Major One?
Yeah, this game's priced pretty accurately in my opinion. If you're gonna make me pick something, I'll take Boston plus 2.5 at about minus 145. Um, that's about as far as I'd take it. I wouldn't really go minus 150 or higher. So if it continues to drop, then I think it's definitely a play. But um, yeah, I think the real question is, honestly, for these first two matches, is are we going to see Bocage game one? And I kind of think no. So just quickly going back to the first game, LAG London. Um, LAG Bocage 2-2 on it. They're okay, like middle of the pack. London, it's the only map they have not won. They're 0-2 on Bocage, and they are 2-1 or better on the other three maps. So London, if they have that map veto, may get rid of Bocage right away, or they may play it again. It's a map where side preference doesn't really matter. And going into the second game, Boston Atlanta, Atlanta have been far and away the best team on Bocage, undefeated, and they're blowing teams out, which is kind of crazy to see. Um, and at the same time, Boston has played it a lot. They're 2-3, so nothing spectacular. I don't know. Boston might veto it when it comes to their time for vetoes, just because Atlanta's scary. I think Boston's like if they're getting a map, I think it's going to be in search. Their search and destroy has been okay. Um, and that game two will be their search and destroy pick again if vetoes play out how I think they should. So I think that game two could go their way. I do worry about control. They have yet to play Tuscan control at all this year, and they're 1-5 on Gavutu. Atlanta also bad on Gavutu. They're 1-3, but they're 2-0 on Tuscan. So we probably get a Tuscan, and the fact that Boston has not played that map like it's a decent indicator that they might be worse on that map than Gavutu. And the fact that they're 1-5 on Gavutu is not inspiring. So I see a 3-0 probably. Um, but I don't know. I kind of think Atlanta 3-1 here. Boston's just they've been a scrappy team all year. They looked okay on LAN at the Kickoff Classic. They didn't win their series versus New York, but they took it the distance at least against a team full of vets. So, yeah, I'm kind of seeing a Boston game 2 win, and Atlanta wins the other 3 and takes it 3-1. Obviously, they're enormous favorites. They should be. So, for all that being said, give me Boston plus 2.5 very slightly.
I think kind of my play is play individual maps for this one, and then if you want, like for me, this is going to be a parlay piece. It's and again, you remember you don't have to play that spread in other. You can get alt spreads and all this stuff. So my play is throwing Atlanta Phase -1.5 in a parlay. You're paying -450 for it, but it's in a parlay, right? So I kind of like that better because yeah, it could be a 3-0, but then Boston could randomly win either the search or the control, but then they're going to just get slaughtered in game 4. So, yeah, I think that's the issue there. I think. Um, Next up, we have a 6 o'clock game. This is a rematch again. Actually, this is the third rematch of the first round. Which again, they said they did this to avoid rematches. Well, we already have three. Thieves versus Ultra. Thieves -1.5 plus 170. Ultra plus 1.5 -225. Thieves -120. Ultra -110. So Thieves are actually the favorite. Again, basically co-favorites, but Thieves are the favorites. Over 4.5 plus 145. Under 4.5 -190. So this line has actually moved quite a bit. This basically started even. This was kind of pegged at exactly even -110, -110. Or I think it was -115, -115 on both sides on Bovada early on. Then it moved to like, well, a couple places I've seen -120, -120, -118, -118. Now we're seeing -120, -110. The next step is going to be like -125, -130, even. I think we could get there. We're starting to see some money coming to these markets. We're seeing the LAG line move. I think we could see that line with Toronto here. I mean, here's the thing: if you're giving me even on Toronto to win, I mean, I kind of don't mind the plus 1.5 in a parlay. I like Toronto money line, and I kind of also like Toronto in some of these spreads. Map one spread, you're looking at Toronto plus 15.5 points. If that's a Bocage, that's pretty good, right? Um, Toronto is yeah okay. There's not a lot of great lines in terms of the individual maps, but no, I don't mind Toronto on the plus 15.5 map one and kind of to win it. I think I'm not sure how Thieves are, but this kind of to me seems like this seems like Toronto can kind of get things back going again. What do you think? Do you think are you earlier said that your model didn't like Thieves as much as other people like Thieves? What do you think about this game? Do you think because Toronto has been hurting? This is not a Toronto has not been a dominant team. They've lost the last three straight. This is not particularly dominant, but those have been three relatively quality opponents. Seattle when they were playing better. Optic, who's now recently researched, and then obviously this Thieves team. What do you think? Are you on Ultra here, or are you gonna stick with the favorite?
Yeah, I slightly lean towards Toronto. Yeah, my model has this as close to a coin flip. I have Toronto winning about 57% of the time. Granted, right, my model doesn't take into account recent performance, so maybe you adjust that down to closer to a coin flip. So with that being said, the value on this series is limited. I don't see a ton I love. I do think we get a Bocage game one. Both teams are solid at it. And I think Thieves would be willing to probably ban Berlin. They have yet to play that. They've played 16 hard points. None of them have been Berlin. So I got to think they're going to veto that again. Toronto has been solid at Bocage. I think they let that through as well. So I think we get a Bocage game one. That could go either way. So if Toronto are getting plus money in that game one, I think that's a decent play. Or if you want to go plus the map spread, that's fine too. But Yeah, we've seen this match twice. Once at the Kickoff Classic, that went to Toronto, and once in the qualifiers for Major I, that went to Thieves. These teams are close. I have these teams as number 5 and number 6 overall. Um, I would wait because I think Thieves' price might get juiced up. And yeah, if you're giving me Toronto at plus money or better, that might be the time where I strike. But I also don't hate, yeah, the plus 1.5 in a parlay, along with that phase pick that you have. So yeah, not a ton to love with this match. But if you're gonna make me pick, I'll take Toronto. I've just seen it longer with these guys. Yes, they're in a rough stretch, but I expect them to bounce back. It's a tough opponent, no doubt. They could very well lose, but yeah, I have trust in them. We saw them at the last LAN win 3 straight, look pretty dominant. Um, yeah, give me Toronto. I don't love it as much as London, but I would say I like it more than Boston. So this right now is the middle game for me.
Yeah, that makes sense. I do kind of like the parlay because like a parlay's building here with phase minus 1.5, ultra minus 1.5, and then the last game uh for Thursday here, sorry. Optic Texas versus Seattle Surge. Optic Texas minus 1.5 plus 105. Surge plus 1.5 minus 135. Optic to win minus 190. Surge to win plus 145. Over 4.5 plus 160. Under 4.5 minus 210. I actually like I really like the thing is this line was inflated when it first came out. Optic opened at about minus 250 or so. That line is wow. That line is crashing across all books. There's a lot of the COD money is coming in today. Um, I really like Optic here. Honestly, Seattle has been falling. I think the original price was a little high, but I think now that there's apparently a ton of Seattle money coming in, I think now is about the right time. I can't believe this is Optic. What's happening here? This is
I
the
know, I was shocked too,
I know actually
honestly.
I'm watching this in real time because this is minus 250. Now this is down to minus on Bet365. This is minus 163. This is insane. I got to put something on this. Yeah, before I'm gonna let you talk and put money on this. Before I do that though, I just
Uh,
want to mention one little thing here. So this is kind of interesting. So Betway Esports, right? Again, we talk about Betway and their super boosts, and we love to fade their super boosts or talk about them at least. I'm seeing it now. It says it's a CS:GO super boost, but it is not a CS:GO because this is saying London Royal Ravens, Atlanta FaZe, and LA Thieves. They're not CS:GO teams, all to win. It says it was basically plus 150. Now it's having them at plus 250. So that is tempting. That is, I mean, again, we've talked about fading. Well, we talked about fading Ravens. The model doesn't like to fade Ravens, but we have obviously FaZe and we have Thieves. We kind of want to fade Thieves. But like yeah, so like that again. So generally with these super boosts, generally they don't work. That's the idea behind these super boosts is that one of them, one at least one, they don't want to give you money for free. They want you to bet on these super boosts, right? So one of these teams will lose. So very well could be Thieves. But it's the reason I'm bringing this up now is it's very interesting. Optic is not in this. Optic is not in the super boost, which you would think people would want that super boost with Optic in there, but it's not. So that's kind of interesting. What do you think? Are you on Optic or are you on Seattle here?
Yeah. Honestly, I see this match a lot like the match we just talked about. I have this as basically a coin flip. Uh, Optic winning about 51% of the time, and Seattle 49%. Granted, Texas is on an upward trajectory, and Seattle is not. So maybe you give Optic a little bit of a boost in that regard. Um, and if you're like me and you like Seattle, like the number keeps dropping. I don't know why. I gotta think it would come back up as we get closer to match time. Cause I don't know. Yeah, I can't explain the price drop for Optic. And if you like them, yeah, take them now because I can't imagine it falls even further. So yeah, if you're like me, I would wait and take Seattle later. But honestly, it's a decent price overall. I think. Honestly, if Toronto's number keeps improving, like if we start to get even money or better on Toronto, and Seattle's number comes up to that, plus 150 or better mark, uh, even towards plus 180, I could see it maybe getting to. Like, I don't hate just playing both of those underdogs straight up and banking on one of them to win because I think they're both very live. And I just like the narrative of I'm taking the two teams that have struggled recently that you're maybe getting a price cut on versus teams that are, not, I mean, I wouldn't go as far as to say that they're hot teams, LA Thieves and Texas, but they're not falling fast like Toronto and Seattle. So I like Seattle a bit. I will like them more if their odds go up, obviously, and I do think that'll happen. So if you're like me, wait. If you're like Robert, take Optic now. Either way, I think these teams are pretty well set up. The loser of this game goes to play Paris. Now, Paris, we can get into a little bit later. They've got some roster reconstruction going on that might surprise people. We'll see. Um, but yeah, Seattle, I guess the other argument is they looked good on the first LAN at the kickoff classic. They kind of showed everybody that they're a legit team. A couple bad matches on, the online qualifiers has hurt their stock a little bit. And Texas, kind of the exact opposite, struggled on land, struggled at the start of the qualifiers, and, did well enough to advance to the winners bracket. So good on them. Obviously, the land's back in Texas, so they'll have the crowd behind them as they always do. But I think we get a really, really good series. I think the difference, if Seattle is going to win this, I do think it goes to a fifth map, and I do think they take the search and destroy. Not that Optic's been a really bad search and destroy team. We've seen them improve, but Seattle are sneaky good when it comes to search and destroy. So if it gets to that game five, I just worry again that we're going to see that Optic crash, if you will, that fall. Um, Even so, you come back the next day, you get to play Paris, and you can start your losers bracket run then. But yeah, I'm super excited for this match and the match before. Honestly, all of the Thursday matches are pretty good, but these last two are going to be really hot.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd say that yeah, I kind of I think that this could be very interesting with some of these matches, and I think my model likes Optic more, or I think probably a more accurate way of saying that is my model hates Seattle more. Is I think the probably the more like I'm not this Optic is not the model is not an Optic homer. Um, but at the same time, it just is really not. It's really not loving this Surge team. Um, the so again, looking at some of these spreads here, game one minus 29.5. Again, if it was a if you knew it wasn't a Bocage, I'd be playing that. Um, minus 24.5 map 4, that's not bad either. So there's lots of different pieces. Like there's different things you can play. Optic Texas plus 1.5, that's not really great. Optic Texas is really good at control though. So the Optic Texas minus 1.5 plus 160 on map 3, that's not bad for control. But no, I kind of like this. I do like Optic against this team. I I don't know. I've maybe said too many bad things about Surge. Maybe they're gonna surprise everybody now and take everybody by storm. But um, I don't know. I think this Surge team. I think people have figured them out a little bit. I think this Surge team. I think they had a bad performance last week, and I don't think people have fully factored in how bad that like they were trailing off last week when like 2 weeks ago when they had a well not 2 weeks ago 3 weeks ago basically when they had a problem dealing with Minnesota when they had to take Minnesota to 5. Then they got crushed by Florida, which is not a particularly great team but an improving team, and then they lost to London again. I think the Surge team is doing operating at a worse pace than people think. I think his Optic team is at a better pace than people think. Because the when they beat down on who they play? They play Toronto, and then did they play someone
Boston?
else? Boston. Yeah, they really beat down on Boston. And I before my model thought Boston was like an okay team. Then after they lost to Optic, my model does not think they're an okay team anymore. So, but no,
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
I will say you did mention the control -1.5 for Optic. That is something I don't mind as someone who prefers the Seattle side of things, just because I think it's pretty likely we're getting a Tuscan in that control. Both teams really good at control. I have Texas as number one, Seattle as number two. Um, I do think Optic would they probably would veto Gavutu. They've only played it once. They did win it, but they're 4-1 on Tuscan. You look at Seattle's numbers: 3-2 on Gavutu, 2-2 on Tuscan. So I think we see a Tuscan, and if you're taking the -1.5, you're really looking for an offensive round win, and that's much, much more likely on Tuscan. So, uh, maybe wait to be for sure on the maps. But if it is a Tuscan, that's something I don't hate whatsoever, especially if you're getting a nice, even money or better price. So,
Yeah. So now let's talk about the matchups that are not on the board yet. So obviously you mentioned the first one, the loser of Optic versus Seattle. They're going on to play Paris. Um, Again, my theory is that like if Seattle's not doing great, I kind of think that Paris could give them like again. Paris has improved a little bit. They took the fight to Thieves earlier this week. A lot 2 weeks ago. Sorry, I'm gonna keep messing that up. They took the fight to Thieves last time they played a couple weeks ago. Seattle has been trending down. Paris made a team change. I didn't think they were. I kind of thought they were done for the year. They're like, cool, this is our team. We are saving as much money as possible for the pizza party at the end of the year, obviously. So we're like, no, no, this is our team. We're we're good, and they've clearly made they made a change. And I think, I mean, obviously, this does not make them a competitive team, but I think I think honestly, it shows that they're like, hey, look, we don't want to be the laughing stock anymore. We want to win a game, and they have to say not win a game. They don't want a hard point. The last time they won a hard point was against FaZe, which is an insane stat. I That is an absolutely like if someone was like, yeah, Paris is going to lose their first 6 games. Their only hard point win is going to be against FaZe. You're like, what? Like that's the level of insanity here. Is that and that's usually that's the only time they ever went to a game five was against FaZe, which is again that was just such a weird. We clearly now in the value of hindsight we can say that's such a weird series. And again, you have to look at this. What's that line going to be? That line, like the pair, like Seattle's going to be like what -1,000. Paris is going to be like what +900, +800 maybe. You're going to get insane values on the +1.5. The +1.5 can be like 200 +200. The +2.5 might be like what +110, +120. Like and you're gonna get insane hardpoint spreads. You might even get like an insane like you might get a +2.5 at you might get a +2.5 in the search at plus money. Like the thing is like when and again I'm not making this up per se. I'm kind of estimating, but again from the futures market, like Seattle is plus 1100 to win the event. Paris is plus 500. They are orders of magnitude worse than the next worst
plus
team. So,
50,000, Robert, not plus 500,
sorry,
plus 50,000.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I need to add a couple more decimals. They're plus 500. Actually, it's plus 500,000. Or no, 500. There, they're plus 50,000 to win. Plus 50,000. So if you bet $1 on Paris, you would win.
500.
No, no, not 500.
Yeah, they're 500 to 1.
Oh yeah, yeah. So sorry, one if they win the series, if they win the event, you win $500. If you bet $1, if you win $10, you win uh $5,000. Um,
Mm.
but no, Paris has got to win a map eventually, right? I think that their NFL comp for me, obviously for Paris, is the Houston Texans. Is a team that obviously has some sort of management issue. The Houston Texans, it's some sort of Baptist preacher running the team. That's kind of weird. For Paris, we don't know what that is. But that's their Call of Duty comp for me. And I kind of think that when you're looking at this, I kind of think that the Paris has to win a game. The Houston Texans won a game. The Jacksonville Jaguars, the the Detroit Lions won NFL games last year. You're telling me that Paris can't win one game against a team that's reeling, even after a team change? Like if they're gonna win a game, it's gonna be after this team change. That's a line I'm looking at. I'll say some other lines I'm looking at too that don't exist yet. Obviously, if we get Florida versus Boston, I like Florida. I don't know what that line would be. My model has it basically even. If I'm getting Florida at even or plus money, I'm taking that. Um, I'm also thinking of if it's Optic versus Phase, I'm like depending on how Optic looks against Seattle, I think it's gonna be more dependent on that. But depending on how Optic looks versus Seattle, I'm gonna be giving Optic a very long look. Again, that the match is gonna be on Saturday, but I'm gonna be giving Optic a very long look, I think. And especially if that comes in at something like plus 200, I don't think it will. He's probably gonna be looking at something plus 150. But if that's coming in at plus 200, yeah, I'm on Optic there. Toronto versus London. That's gonna be a fascinating match. Maybe London be an underdog in that match. Actually, no, probably not. Toronto will be the underdog in the match by the betting lines. So by the futures market. So, what are you thinking? What are some of the games you're looking ahead to? What are some of the lines you think could be out there? Some value you think? What do you think?
Yeah, just because you mentioned it quite a bit, I'll talk about the potential Paris match as well. Um, yeah, it's interesting because obviously they're the worst team in the league. They have yet to win a match this year, 0-5 in qualifiers, and they lost their only match at the kickoff. But yeah, if what you say about Seattle is right, and they are struggling mightily, then yeah, a team that has a fresh roster, maybe some positional changes, like yeah, sure, they could upset a Seattle team that's reeling. I that's not out of the question. Uh, Again, I go back to map vetoes. Right, Paris as the 12 seed will never get the map veto advantage throughout this tournament, so that makes things really tough, especially when you go map by map. So it's honestly just looking at Paris's performance metrics are funny, I think. Not to be mean, but like here's where they rank in hardpoint for every map. Berlin 12th, Bocage 12th, Gavutu 8th, Tuscan 12th. Okay, so if you're Seattle or Optic, even if you're competent at Gavutu, you just ban that, right? So then you got 12, 12, and 12 as the power rankings for Paris. Search and destroy by map. Now they have not played a Bocage, but 10th on Berlin, 10th on Desert Siege, and 10th on Tuscan. And then you go to control, they're 6th on Gavutu. Hey, top half, not bad. And they're dead last 12th on Tuscan. Granted, they've only played that once. But when it comes to Paris, I don't know where those maps are coming from. Maybe they're okay on Tuscan and we just haven't seen it. Maybe they're okay on Desert or on Bocage Search and Destroy and we just haven't seen it. But I tend to think that the Optic Seattle loser, even though they will have lost, and even if it's Seattle, like I've seen enough of Seattle early in the year and on land to think like, okay, they're a solid team. This is a great bounce back spot. But yeah, if like just don't be shocked if Paris come out and perform well because of the team change, because they have literally nothing to lose. Like, yeah, I don't know. We saw it last year with Seattle in Major 5. They went on a run, beat Atlanta when they fell down to losers bracket. Like crazy stuff like that can happen. I do think this Paris team is worse than last year's Seattle team, but crazy stuff can happen. So don't be shocked if Paris come out and maybe take it to a map 5. Honestly, regardless who they play. If it's Optic Paris and losers, can you just imagine for 1 second what it would be like if Paris won that match? Like like Optic at their own major, lose to a good Seattle team, they get bounced down to losers bracket and then lose to the worst team in the league and are done. Like that would be shocking. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but like there's a non-zero chance that happens. Anyway, I have Optic as my number 3 team in the league. I don't think that'll happen with all that being said. So the Paris match for, what we're expecting, probably a blowout, it might not be. And yeah, the other match I like in losers bracket, or that I might like depending on the price, is the Florida match that you mentioned. Um, so Florida will play the loser of, I think, is it Atlanta Boston?
Yes.
Yes. So in all likelihood, that's Boston. And yeah, I think we probably get a Boston team that's favored. And I would take Florida in a match versus Boston straight up head to head. So that one I see. Now, granted, maybe we don't if Boston, gets destroyed by Atlanta, then you could maybe have a situation where Florida's favored. The only difference between those teams in the qualifiers were tiebreakers. So Boston lucked out, got to start in winners bracket, got the privilege of playing Atlanta in round one, but they probably, in all likelihood, will fall to Florida, and they'll just have to play a head-to-head match to continue on anyway. So I think the spread on that would be pretty close, but yeah, if you're giving me plus money or better on Florida, like I will eat that up every day of the week. And yeah, the other matches, the Thieves Toronto loser would go on to play New York. That's obviously intriguing because we might see a New York team with Neptune back. I don't know. I've been seeing a lot of rumors that he might come back to the lineup, might not. Granted, I don't know how much that helps if it's him or Royalty. Both have been subpar throughout the year. But New York looked good on LAN at the kickoff classic. We're back in that environment. Granted, that was a different meta, but it's not crazy to think they might come out and upset a Toronto team that might be reeling or a Thieves team that might disappoint. So that one's intriguing. And then the Minnesota game, they play the loser of LAG London. Either way, it's a rematch for Minnesota. They beat LAG in qualifiers. They lost to London. So intriguing storylines either way. I don't really have a strong opinion on what that hypothetical might be, but yeah, there's a lot that can happen. And one thing I will say when we're talking about teams that could win the whole thing, right? Obviously, starting in winner's bracket matters a ton. If you're starting in loser's bracket, you need to win 6 consecutive games, a lot of those without the map veto advantage in a row to win this major. So that's very unlikely to happen for any of the teams starting in losers. The teams starting in winners bracket have right one game to work with, so they can lose one, go on a run, still win the whole thing. When it comes to the best of nine, and I mentioned it earlier, it matters more to be better in search and in control. Just how it differentiates itself between the best of five series, right? Because in the best of five series, we get at most 40% of the games are hard points, 40% of the games are searches, and 20% are control. Those numbers fluctuate a little bit with the best of nine setup. We get slightly less hard point frequency and slightly more search and control. So if you're looking at futures, just take that into account. Who are those better teams at those modes who might be undervalued? To me, Seattle is a clear one for that candidate. Hardpoint has not been a strength of theirs, but they've looked very good in both search and control. So, and a lot of this depends on their first round matchup versus Optic, a match in which they're underdogs in. If they can get over that initial hump, it like we could see a run for Seattle that ends up with a best of nine win at the end of it. London are a decent candidate for that. They're well rounded overall, obviously. And obviously, when you're a better team, the best of nine format helps because the longer you play the match, the more advantageous it is for the favorite. Um, so yeah, those are just things to consider when picking futures or filling out your pickums for who might go the distance. But with all that being said, yeah, I'm super, super excited to catch all these matches. Yeah, 18 total across 4 days is awesome. Granted, like Friday, Saturday might be a little wonky because, Friday is all of losers bracket plus another losers bracket match. So that's funky. I know Saturday's kind of like that too. But yeah, regardless, we're going to have a lot of COD to watch. And yeah, we'll finally have our first major champion of the year. So I am super stoked.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the point. I think so. One more thing, I just kind of want to bring us back to the futures market for 1 second here. So, I actually have an update. So I've actually reran my model a little bit. I think my model, it wasn't so much the problem with the updating after the ELO. I think it was just the the calibration of it of the games itself was a little off. So I've changed it now, and I actually have FaZe winning almost half of all the majors now, and I have basically it pushes everybody a little bit down. But basically, Paris now unfortunately does not win a major. Very unfortunate. They get to the finals one time, but they lose that finals. I don't know who that's against, but probably
Oh,
statistically phase. You know what I might do? I might just like for the meme. I might just keep rerunning this until I get Paris winning one time, and then I'll just like do the Doctor Strange Infinity War meme. I'm gonna do that now. Okay, we're gonna run this like 10 times tonight until we get. So the numbers will change a little bit, but we're gonna get one Paris win. All right, we're gonna do it. So no. I've got FaZe at about 50%, which actually gives them value on their futures market, and I got Toronto about 9%, Thieves 7%, Optic 11%, London about 10%. So not a they go down. Everybody else goes down a couple percent. The Atlanta goes up a little bit, showing that they're just a little bit more dominant. They get to the finals about 70% of the time. The question is, so my last question here before we go is just about the futures market and how you want to play it. So so I personally, I've put a unit on Toronto. I put a unit on Thieves because the thing is, it's not a bad strategy because they'll play round one. The winner will play um the winner of London LAG, which I think the winner of that match can easily beat them. And then all of a sudden, cool, you've got a team at plus 700 in the winners finals. They're probably gonna be about even to win that, and then you got a team in the winners finals. But then also the loser of that match will then go down to play New York Subliners, who not only have not won a hard point, but they've also not covered a hard point spread um, in weeks. So it's bad for them. Then they'll go on, and I think they play. I don't remember who they play exactly. Let me just check. They will play. They'll play the winner of Minnesota, who Minnesota will play the winner of Minnesota will play the loser of LAG London. So actually, that bracket kind of circles itself. So basically, you're basically dealing with either Minnesota, LAG, or London, whichever is the worst of those top two. So that's not bad. And then at that point, then I think you then have to deal with the loser of Optic or Phase. But that's still not bad to then get to the elimination final, and then you have you have the elimination round four and then elimination final. So it's not a bad path even for the loser, because especially if Optic underperforms against FaZe or if FaZe underperforms, you could take down FaZe there, and then once you get past FaZe, then you're suddenly in the win in the basically then you're in the losers bracket finals, and then you're in the finals against hopefully the other end of the bracket itself, and you're sitting at plus 2 700s in the final. But no, I mean sitting here with FaZe at plus 100, my question to you is, and I don't know if you bet this, maybe you'll clarify this in a second, but if we don't bet FaZe, are we going to regret it? Like, are we going to be sitting here on Sunday night at 2 a.m. When the match starts, when the last match of the day starts, and being like, damn, we should have bet, should we had FaZe was right there at plus 100. If we had taken it, now again, I also said this to you at the kickoff classic, and FaZe immediately went 0-1 out. What do you think here? Do you think that maybe that it's probably safe. Like, again, I'm sitting at about 50%. You're sitting at about 40% to win this. What do you think? Do you think we should everybody have their safety blanket phase ticket or what?
I tend to think no. Last year
Interesting.
I liked them yeah, last year I liked them a lot, and part of that was just they were, I think, more dominant last year. I don't think anyone's arguing that. Now, I know they're 5-0 so far, but just last year's dominance was unreal, and it happened, essentially start to finish the entire year. Um, yeah, but the format is different, right? This major, there's not a whole lot different between like the 1 seed and the 3 seed or 4 seed. Whereas last year, if you were the 1 seed from your group, you got that winners round 1 bye, which helps your odds quite a bit. Like the fact if we had that again, right? Like it would boost Atlanta's percentages slightly, right? Like in my model, Atlanta has about a 9 and 10 chance to beat Boston. But if we're in last year's format, right, you just take that 10% that they lose. Granted, they're not eliminated if they lose that match, but you take that 10% and you add that on to their, total odds of winning. Now this year, and that might explain why my numbers are down for them this year because last year, a lot of the time, they were running at about that 50-50 clip to win the whole tournament. But they had to win 2 matches in a row when they were in grand finals. Now you gotta win 3. Granted, that first one should be easy, especially if you're the 1 seed, but it's just a little bit of percentage that you lose that now listen, like, Atlanta are the favorites overwhelmingly, no doubt. If they win, so be it. Like, I don't think it's crazy to say, like, Atlanta FaZe are going to win a major or champs this year. Like, that seems like a lock at some point. Will it be this one? Maybe, maybe not. But no, yeah, this time around, I see a little more value in those contenders than I do at the very top with Atlanta. Granted, my numbers might be a little short on them if these map vetoes matter, more than I might think or might know. Um, but yeah, right now I like London at the price they're at. I know a lot of people don't, but to me they're the second best team in the league. They have the number 2 seed, um, and 450 to me at least isn't a bad price. Uh, and I have just a touch on Seattle. Again, I laid out the path for them. They are in a best of 9 format, if they can get there, pretty well set up for that. They're good at both control maps, they're good at search and destroy, and hardpoint matters less, which they're not so good at. So those are the 2 teams I don't mind. I think the worst values on the board, honestly, right now I see LA Thieves at 5-1 to win the whole thing. I know it might be higher in some other places, but that seems steep. They have a tough first round match against, relatively tough, all things considered, first round match versus Toronto. Um, and yeah, Optics price, again, a little inflated. They have them priced as the second best team in the league. I have them as fourth most likely to win. So, right, wouldn't shock me if they do. I have them winning about 1 in 10 times, but um, just the value in that at plus 350 or so just isn't there. So, um, yeah, I see London and Seattle as the best values. Um, I know people might see it differently. If you want the phase blanket, that comfy phase blanket, so be it. I just think that even money price you're paying kind of limits you with what other, you know, like you can't go so deep picking the field if you are going to take phase at even money. So it just depends on how you want to approach it. But if phase win, I'll take the L, But I just think with this year, with this format, with this game, I think, phase might not be quite as dominant as what we're used to.
Yeah, that makes sense. I personally, for myself, I have not bet phase yet. I think I am continuing to find excuses to not bet phase. I'm running out of them. Um, but no, I mean yeah, I mean, all right, I'll do it because what are they going to be next major? I mean, this is not as dominant as of a phase of we have seen, right?
Yeah, and you're paying at what I think is your highest price. Like, they haven't lost yet in the regular season, so their price is obviously going to be very high. If they come in, major 2 qualifiers, maybe struggle a bit, go 3-2, end up as the 4 seed, that might be the time to buy on phase. I just think it's a little too rich for my taste right now, at least.
Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, I think that's a good place to end. I think we are mostly in agreement in things. I like London. I just don't think this is their major. Like I 100% think they will be winning a major this year. And when there's a London at plus 1,000 ticket to be had, I'll be having that ticket.
That's
But that
fair. You are paying a premium on London probably because they are still pretty hot. So I completely get that.
like here's the thing: if London was the same price as Toronto or a little lower than Toronto and Thieves combined, not specific. There's not like a Toronto demarcation line there, but like if they were around that same price, then yeah, I would have like maybe even plus 800, I would have taken it. But I just plus 450 is high for a young team. I mean, again, Afros has a little bit of experience on land. They're only like, but then you're looking at Nasty and Gizmo. This is basically their second LAN, and again, they played 3 maps on LAN the first time. again, they're a good team. I really like that team. They are going to have a good major at some point. I just don't know if it's this one. That's my only thing is I just don't know if it's going to be this major. But we will know in a couple days when if LAG takes them out, then that's gonna feel really bad. But I mean, LAG my model has them over like LAG overwhelmingly as the underdog in that matchup. London overwhelmingly favorite. So yeah. So thank you everybody for listening. Go check out. I recently did a podcast for the Best of Three Network. Go check them out. They're great. They have amazing content. And hop in the Discord chat for that. If you listen to us here, I'm very active in that Discord. A lot of other people are active in that Discord as well. Ryan here from CDLMetrics, he's just joined. He'll hopefully try to be active in the Discord as well. It's a nice place to talk about COD. I mean, I know we've got quite a few listeners for this podcast. Um, it's hard to find people to talk to about Call of Duty. Because again, it's not it's growing in popularity, but again, a lot of people in your friend group might not necessarily be following it. So come on, come talk with us about it. We love talking about it, and you can come talk to us about it too. So yeah, come in the Discord and yeah, I mean, enjoy this weekend of COD. We're gonna get a full weekend of COD. Four on Thursday, 5 on Friday. I actually was wrong. 5 on Saturday, and then 4 again on Sunday. So yeah, enjoy this feast of COD this weekend, and we'll see you next week talking about what just happened. See you, everybody.